Okay. Um, Now, since I've made my point here, um, how about these beautiful Ludwig drums? I just set them up in honor of my guest today, Jim Catalano. Um, First time I've set these up here in my new drum room in my new house, and I've got the Kelly Shoe bass drum, mounting system inside there, and they sound amazing. I'm thinking I'll do the whole show like this today. What do you think? I'll just be kind of standing up, bent over, um, something new and different. Anyway, yeah, and what a pleasant surprise it was to play these drums for a few minutes a little while ago. Uh, Not surprisingly, they sound fantastic. It's a 1969 Ludwig kit, 3-ply maple shells, the clear interiors. It was the last year of that badge, um, Keystone badge. So that much I know. I don't know a real lot about Ludwig. It's my only Ludwig set, but I'm showing you this jazz festival snare drum that I have. That's I think early '60s, early maybe '64, maybe '65, maybe it's mid '60s. I actually have a lot of Ludwig snares in my collection, and I sometimes forget, silly me, how beautiful all these drums sound. On that set, I've got a '65 Ludwig Superphonic. So it's not the same year as the rest of the drums, but it's a Keystone badge with the baseball bat muffler type situation. I'm talking Ludwig speak to all you Ludwig guys here. So anyway, I'm going to put this drum back on the shelf and let you look at these drums for a minute. It's the bowling ball finish, oyster oyster blue, I think it's called, bowling ball. Anyway, thanks for joining me, everybody. It's great to see all you folks. Looks like we got quite a few folks watching as usual. This is fantastic. I think we're on to something here. Things are catching on. This show's catching on. Good afternoon, David Foster, my old friend. Hello, Anthony. You had the same exact set back in the day. How about that? Great minds think alike. I just bought this kit, I want to say in 2017. My son saw it for sale on one of the Facebook pages, groups. And I had just seen James Gadson playing with Bill Withers, like this old video clip from the early '70s of James Gadson playing with Bill Withers, playing that pretty much that same, not that exact kit, but the same kit. And I tell this story. I told James Gadson this, in fact, that I thought if I bought those drums, I'd sound like James Gadson. The joke was on me, obviously. Um, that's a 22. Are you asking me, Anthony, what size? Yes, it's a 22-inch bass drum. It's a 13, 16, 22 kind of standard sizes. Anyway, a couple of quick things before I bring my good friend Jim Catalano on. If I haven't mentioned this, it's episode 28. Um, if you're on episode 29, you're early for Saturday. So, or if you're on episode 27, you're late, if that makes sense. But if you're here for episode 28, you're right on time. So episode 28 today, live from my drum room with my good friend Jim Catalano, whom I'm proud to say I've known close to 40 years. I first met him in 1984. I was working at a drum shop in Boston called Freddie G's Drums with my friend Freddie Gilfeather. He and I opened the shop together, and I met Jim that year. He came to visit us at the shop. I think he'd been with Ludwig a year or so at that time. And when I started working in the industry about a year later, I remember seeing him at a NAMM show or somewhere. And not surprisingly, Jim remembered me and was so nice. And we've been friends ever since. So, yeah, so I'm really psyched he's going to be here very soon. Want to give you a quick update. I know you're all dying to know what's happening on YouTube, and I can tell you I'm at 546 subscribers as of right now. 546. Again, I'm just sort of blown away. I didn't think that many people even knew about YouTube. 546 people. So the fact that I have that many subscribers, I think tells you that, I'm on to something here, and it's pretty exciting. I got my vaccine. I got vaccinated on Monday. My daughter-in-law, Keely, who is just the most awesome daughter-in-law, my son's wife, booked me an appointment last Friday. Technically, I was eligible to book at age 60. I was eligible for this past Monday, 2 days ago, the 22nd of March. But Keely found a way to register me or book an appointment last Friday. And the bonus to the whole thing was I went there not knowing what I was going to get, but because it was my first shot, it was the Johnson & Johnson one and done, that's it shot. So I got vaccinated all in one day, one and done, which I'm very excited about. Had I, Anthony, I got the Johnson & Johnson. Yeah. Had I gotten the Pfizer or the Moderna and, had to go back for a second shot, I'd been happy with that too. I was looking at other locations where I could have it done. Where I had it done was in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is 60 miles from where I live. So it was a little bit of a journey to get there on Monday morning, but best 60 miles I've ever driven, especially where, like I said, it was the Johnson & Johnson one and done. So really psyched about that. Spring is here, beautiful weather these past few days. Got to see my grandkids on Sunday. That was the best, fantastic, so great. I have the best grandkids in the world. All right. One other thing I want to mention to you guys, a couple of quick things. I recently as this morning, changed my public Facebook page. I actually have 2 personal Facebook pages. I'm not proud of this. It's this limit, the 5,000 friend limit thing they, for whatever reason, have. So I had started a second personal page some years ago, and then I started a public page, or created a public page. So this morning, I changed my public page to my name, which it had already been, John DeChristopher, live from my drum room. So I'm going to start streaming to that page in the future. So you'll see that. You'll get invitations to attend these things on Facebook from John DeChristopher live from my drum room. You can follow that page if you haven't already, or like it, or whatever you do to follow it. And you'll hopefully be kept up to date on these shows. So so check that out. So my name - live from my drum room is my recently renovated public Facebook page. I think I have about 5,000 followers, but that I think is unlimited. I can keep going. It's not going to max out at 5,000. Okay. This Saturday, Andy Newmark will be my guest. That's going to be at 1 p.m. You should see a notification on Facebook. I just confirmed next Wednesday, the 31st of March, Jerry Marotta will be my guest, my favorite Marotta brother. Of all the Marottas, he's my favorite. Everybody knows that. So Jerry will be joining me next Wednesday. The following Saturday, April 3rd, Mickey Curry, who needs no introduction. I'm very excited about my buddy Mickey. The following Saturday, Liberty DeVito. Wicked psyched for that. Love Liberty's playing. Have been a big fan of his for a long time, and his book is going to be arriving any minute, and I'm excited to read it before we do our hang on the 10th. And then on the 17th, I have Ash Sohn, who actually is going to be Seth Meyers' house band drummer, I think next week on the Seth Meyers show. I'll put something up on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. But Ash is going to be doing that show. He has all these guest drummers on the Seth Meyers show. So Ash will be doing it. Very cool. Hey, Ann Palmer. Good to see you, buddy. My very good friend, an excellent drummer and handsome guy, Ian Palmer. I want to say hello to him. And hello, Penny Lane. Penny, I've got some exciting news about gigs, which I'll share with you. Maybe I'll share it publicly too, but we'll get to that. All right. The last thing I want to mention is, I know I'm cutting into Jim Catalano's time, and I apologize for that. But the last thing I want to mention, I've jumped on the bandwagon. All these famous drummers are writing books, and instructional books are coming up with exercises, drum exercises. So I've come up with my own exercise, and I call it the schlep-a-diddle. Now, if any of you drummers out there are like me, you haven't gigged in about a year now, right? We've been in kind of gig lockdown for a year. And what happens to me is when I haven't gone on a gig for that amount of time, I forget how to pack my car. I forget how to, efficiently set my drums up. I take stuff out of my trap case and I go, okay, how does my hi-hat go together? And wait a minute, is that my ride cymbal stand? And how do I hook up my bass? So here's what I'm suggesting. This is my schlep-a-diddle exercise. And I think it's going to be great for all of us drummers. You take your drum set. By the way, check out those beautiful Ludwig drums. You take your drum set, any drum set, and you pack it up into your bags, in my case, my Beto bags, and load it into your car. So you're getting the practice of packing your car correctly and efficiently. Drive around the block 2 or 3 times, come back to your house, unpack your drums, and set them up. You might want to try that. Try it a couple of times. I might try that a couple of times. This Saturday at about 6 o'clock, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pack up a set of drums, load them in my car, drive around the block a couple of times, come back home and set them up so that when it's time to go back and go to work, we'll be efficient. So there's my tip for the day. It's called schlep-a-diddle. It involves no workout on the pad. It's pure schlepping. And you're welcome. Okay. I think I covered all the bases. I think I did. All right. All right. So I'm very excited about Jim Catalano. Nice Ludwig left-handed kit. Yes, it is, Jim. It sounds beautiful too. All right. James, I'm glad you like my schlep-a-diddle idea. All right, Bob Harson. Good to see you, man. So I'm going to now bring out my very special guest and my very, very good friend. And also, I want to say this again, a man that I have tremendous admiration and respect for. 36 years, I hope I'm right with 36 years at Ludwig, but also some time at Slingerland and Premier before that. So he's really an icon in the drum industry. Please welcome my good friend, Jim J. Catalano. And there he is. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
It's great to have you, buddy. And thanks for your comment about my left-handed drum set.
Of course. Well, you're the one of the only ones I know that does that.
Yeah, there's only a handful of us weirdos. You can say that again.
I'm just
I
glad the stuff can go back and forth either way.
Yeah, that's right. Well, when we did our sound check earlier, I had my Gretsch. I don't know if you even noticed in the background, I had one of
Yeah.
my Gretsch sets. And when we finished, I had thought about this before, and I just didn't have time. But when we finished, I quickly set this set up because I wanted to have that in the background.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I love Gretsch too, but Ludwig's special for me.
I understand. I
That's for
understand.
sure.
And we got some great folks watching. I can see Uli's watching, Uli Salazar, and
Right.
good man at Ludwig, the man that you've handed the baton to, the
Yeah,
torch.
he's got the keys.
He's got the keys.
The keys that Mr. Ludwig gave to me, Uli Salazar has them going forward for the next generation.
That's great. I'll definitely get Uli on here one of these days. And Todd Trent. Wow. Okay. And I was going to mention Todd. Todd's watching.
One of my
Todd, you're
best
the
friends,
yeah.
and could not have survived the years at Ludwig without Todd, as far as advisor, artist relations, just products, everything. I mean, he
Yeah.
was absolutely essential.
I know. And Todd, what a guy. I mean, running the music store, owning the music store,
Yeah,
and running artist relations for Ludwig, and Superman. He should have a
yeah,
big giant T on his and a cape.
yeah, definitely Superman. I mean, it
Yeah.
was amazing what he was able to accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah. You
So
know, I was just going to say, you probably don't remember this, but when I bought this drum set, I bought it in the summer of 2017.
I
I reached,
remember.
you remember,
I
yeah.
do.
And of course I got in touch with you, and you were kind enough to send me a Ludwig logo head for it, which I appreciated. And I've since, and then another friend of mine, John Chalden, sent like the actual 60s, from the 60s, a scripted Ludwig head bass drum head that he had.
Yeah.
But someone, I'll just say, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but someone had seen this kit and said, well, if it's a 69 kit, they'd actually transitioned to that logo by that time. So I put that on there, but
Yeah. No, that's about right. Yeah.
okay. It's the little things, right?
Yeah, really.
So I hope I have my information correct, Jim. 36 years with Ludwig.
Yeah, 36
30.
years with Ludwig. I started with Ludwig in 1983. But prior to that, I worked for Slingerland for 2 years,
Yep.
and prior to that, I worked for Premier for 3 years.
Okay. So Premiere first, right? Okay. Yep.
Yeah, everything was I would say, just kind of a happy coincidence. Okay, like in Seinfeld, a pretty big coincidence. No, there's just coincidences, but it all sort of kind of goes back to, I got accepted to grad school at Notre Dame, for back in 1975. And while I was there, I had just sold my Gretsch 1969 drum set.
Wow. Yeah.
Kind of a stupid thing to do in hindsight now, okay? And because I was more of a percussionist and I needed to buy a vibraphone, because, I'm sort of a professional vibe player now. Not like Gary Burton. No one can be like Gary Burton, but I'm one of those guys that tries. And so I needed a vibraphone, but I didn't have enough money. So I sold my Gretsch drum set, and I had 2/3 of what it was going to cost me to buy a vibraphone. So I bought the vibes, and I said, well, maybe someday I'll get a drum set. Well, I had told the jazz band director that I was really regretting selling my drum set. And so he said, well, I got a guy coming over today who might be able to help you. And so that's when I first met a guy named Jim Coffin.
Jim Coffin.
And he came in and we became fast friends. And he said to me, hey, why don't you come on over to the plant, which was in Elkhart, Notre Dame's in South Bend. And the plant for Premier at the time was partially owned by Selmer. And so the plant was in Elkhart, which is a 25-mile trip. So I drove over there, went to the warehouse, and he said, I can sell you any of these drum sets for this price. And let me just tell you, it was a very low price by today's standards, but it was still some money, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
And so I bought a Premier 4-piece drum set, and boy, I was just thrilled because now I had my drums back, I had my vibes back. I was just really doing well. And then later then I became a band director after I graduated from Notre Dame, a high school band director. I mean, that's what I did.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I taught both high school and middle school. And I don't know if I was very good at it, but I did it. Okay.
I'm sure you were good at it.
And anyway, so I went to the Midwest Band and Orchestra Convention where I actually ran into Jim Coffin. And he remembered me and stuff. And so this was like 1976 or 7. And so finally in the summer of 1978, I get a call from Jim Coffin. And he said, I need some extra help over here at Premier during the summer. Would you be interested in coming over and helping me with some sales and marketing things for Premier Drums? And I said, well, yeah, that sounds good. So I went over, talked to him, and before I knew it, I was kind of working. It was full-time work at the time, but it was only going to be for a couple months, like June and July, And then finally, I said, well, Jim, I got to go back to teaching school. I got to start my band program in August. And he said, well, what would it take to get you to stay? And so they made me an offer to stay with the company to be an employee. And I was sort of his assistant for 3 years. And let me tell you, it was when you have a long career and you also, you sit back and people say, well, boy, you had a lot of successes along the way. But, those successes are on kind of the shoulders of other people that got you there. In the case of Jim Coffin, he was probably the best mentor, teacher, friend that you possibly could ever have. And that he just taught me the ropes the right way. But he also taught me with a sense of humor.
I was going to say.
It was funny. It was always having a good time. And consequently from there, he introduced me to some people that are important to you too. And, there was a group of guys, Lenny DeMuzio, Lloyd McCausland, and Jim Coffin, and they were called the Jew-Ops, which stood for junior executives without power. Because they were like in these middle management roles at Remo, Zildjian, and at Premier,
Yep.
and they had very little power, but they were kingpins in our industry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as a result of that, I'm part of this network of people now. And, Lloyd and Lenny, they sort of took me under their wing too. And, just sort of taught me so much. I used to just talk to them constantly, not just at shows, but over the phone. Back then, that's all we had was phone and in person. And, to the point where when I needed cymbals, I showed a picture the other day of playing, I play in the Notre Dame Faculty Jazz Trio, and I had a picture of my cymbal setup, and Paul Francis was on, and he said, "Hey, you got an original flat top ride from like the 70s. And I said, "Yeah, that was picked out for me by Lenny DiMuzio." And he said, "Well, those are kind of rare. That's a really valuable cymbal, And
Yeah.
so anyway, so I had all these great experiences to kind of be part of this network of these great people. And then finally, I sort of I got to the point where I had an opportunity to go into advertising and to have a little bit more responsibility. And this was at a time in 1981 when actually the Selmer Company that partially owned Premier divested themselves of Premier, and then they bought Ludwig.
Yeah. I forgot all this stuff.
But
Yeah.
I didn't work for Ludwig then.
Right.
So
Right.
I left just before the sale
Yeah.
of Ludwig, and I went to work for Slingerland as the advertising manager. And I worked with a guy named Dick Richardson, who was the president, and a guy named Spence Alicio, and I was their ad manager. Boy, that was a great experience too. Now I have to admit it was in what we'll call Slingerland's last years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a very struggling time, but I still learned a lot from everybody. And as a result of that, working there for the 2 years I did, that's where I got the call from the Selmer Company again. They needed somebody that they knew, that they trusted, that they thought could take on the marketing role at Ludwig.
Yeah.
And so that's how I went back to the Selmer Company, and I started working for Ludwig in 1983. And yeah, I lasted for 36 years. I never thought I would last that long. Some of the guys that are on right now, like Todd especially, every day was the last day. And we used to go to shows, and for years and years, I would say to like guys like Ron Dennett and different people that had cameras, I said, "Hey, can you take my picture with me on the display? I think this is my last show."
Well, I remember you saying that to me a few times, and we'd sort of laugh about it, but for me, I'd be thinking, "Oh God, I hope not." I hope for Ludwig's case that doesn't happen. And I think everybody that had some, even if they didn't have a connection to Ludwig, felt that way. Like, oh no, we need this guy there.
I think what it got into, it became, kind of a joke in a way, but it became something where it was a self-fulfilling prophecy that if I did not take that photo, then it probably would have been the last one.
I got you.
And so by taking the photo gave me a sort of like a lease on another year.
Yeah.
And then it went for 36 years, which is really quite phenomenal. Especially when you go through a lot of takeovers and going public for, many years and having, different presidents and different styles, a lot of different bosses. I mean, I had 34 bosses in 36 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And sometimes though, everybody wants to go a different direction. We're going this way one day, then they're gone, and now we're going this way. And so you have to learn to go back and forth and be kind of pliable. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why I survived for so long, was because I kind of knew my stuff because I had good training, but I didn't get it all absorbed that it was all about me.
Yeah. Yep. I was going to just say that in all the time and all the years that I've known you, I tried to say this during the setup of this whole thing too, was, your humility was always omnipresent. It was never about you. It was always about the company. And I remember, like, we would work together when Danny Gottlieb was playing Ludwig, and we were putting some clinics together, and you were always, that's what I loved about you, was you were always straight up about what you could do and what you couldn't do. And it's like, look, this is my budget. Um, I can do this, this, and this, but I can't do those other things. So if you want to do those other things, I'm sorry, but as an example, and I think that's what everybody that knows you appreciates about you, that you were just always straight
Well,
about everything.
there just had to be a balance. Okay,
Yeah,
so revenues, expenditures. You had to make sure that they balanced out. And that's probably another reason why I kind of survived for the longest time. But one of the things that I get a lot of credit for being at Ludwig a long time and kind of being in a, let's just say, in a position of responsibility. But the bottom line goes back to, if I didn't have a great factory and great people in the factory
yeah,
making the products and diligently always striving to be better and better, and some guys that have been there for a very long time. For example, there's a guy named Kelly Turner who actually started it not so much at Ludwig, but working in the North Carolina plant before I even started. So he's still there. He's
yeah.
in his 60s now. But
Wow.
I had so many people that I relied on, but then I would be the one that was out in the public eye. Okay, and as a result of that, everyone knew me, and so I sort of got a lot of the credit, when in reality the credit needs to go back to the people behind the scenes, because there were so many people behind the scenes.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's no, that's nice of you to make that distinction and clarification. But yeah, I understand that too. I to some degree can relate to that. And but at the same time, I think you were a calming presence to a lot of longtime, endorsers that absolutely love the brand and love the product. But there's things changing, as you say, with
Yeah.
takeovers or new people coming in, and they need that familiar face
I
to.
think it's sort of first of all, being a percussionist,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
wasn't just a drum set player. I was a guy that played the marimba and I played the timpani and I was in drum corps. And, and so I had all of these other attributes as far as being a full total percussionist. And that's what Ludwig and Musser was all about. It was
yeah,
total percussion. So, you take that side of it, and then you have, we'll call it the business elements. And my education was in music. It was not in business.
right,
Okay.
right.
But I discovered something pretty early on. I used to sit down and say, oh my gosh, I got to write catalogs now. I mean, people are going to be judging my grammar, things of that nature. you know, and then I said, all right, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to write like I talk. When I'm explaining something, I will write that way. And it got me through a lot of years.
Yeah,
Okay, and likewise in presentations, I've always said that just being a good communicator is kind of an important thing. I think it was Woody Allen also had this saying that 80% or success. What is success? 80% of success is simply showing up
hmm,
consistently all the time. The other 20% of success is, don't be a jerk. Be a nice guy.
yeah, yeah,
Treat people the way they want to be treated, and you're probably going to have a pretty good run at things.
yeah. I know. No, very simple, but it's amazing how many people sort of don't understand that. But we won't go there. But you're right.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
I
That
think
and
there's
that,
an
that's
element. There is an element of luck in a way. I have this saying. I've said it once in another interview that I was really lucky to go to Notre Dame for grad school on a full ride scholarship. It's the only way a mailman's son was going to go to Notre Dame. Okay, you know, but I did. I graduated. So graduating wasn't luck. That was work.
that's
Okay.
right. Yeah,
And I think I was pretty lucky to have all the stars line up in getting my first job with Premiere, and then again with, well, we'll say with Ludwig in 1983. And that was lucky. And then a lot of things happened, but
Yeah.
you had to do a lot of work. You had to put in the time.
Right.
And, hopefully, thankfully, I survived a very, very long time through that. But it was because I loved the product. But I always said I didn't work for the company as much as I worked for the brand. I worked for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
brand. And that was out of my utter respect, of course, for the chief, Bill
Yeah.
Ludwig Jr., or Bill
Yeah.
Ludwig II, as he changed his name to. And, I just loved the guy. And, he just took me under his wing. And I think about just how blessed I was that he said, Jimmy, I'm going to teach you everything that I know. Now, he was retired. He didn't
Yeah.
have to do that. But we got him out on the road, traveling to shows, used to see him constantly.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and so, as a result of that, spending all this time with him, I got to know what I call the stories behind the stories, why things happened. Okay.
That's
And
cool.
so it was just a pretty cool thing. I imagine you had very similar things with Armand and Leggy and Lenny, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did. And we want to talk more about your experiences, but yeah, I like yourself though. I feel so incredibly fortunate to have had all that time with Armin and Lenny, and it was yeah. I mean, it was the most amazing kind of mentorship and experience. And like yourself, I'd already worked in the industry a few years before that job, but that was I went from Simmons to DW, which was a step up, and then what I looked to be the real major leagues was Zildjian and with Armin and Lenny. And I already knew you at that point, but it's just like you were saying, those guys thought the world of you. Armin and Lenny, we'd see you at NAMM or at PASIC or at any of the shows, and Lenny would say, "Yeah, Johnny, Jimmy Catalano needs a couple of cymbals over at the Ludwig booth. Let's get him." And you were just, yeah. I mean, it was, and I want everybody to know. I mean, I think you sell yourself short as a drummer. I know you're a fine vibe player, but I've heard you play drum set, and you are one heck of a fine drum set player, man.
I
I
actually
just,
do drums is my best thing, and I actually do that the most. Okay, and yeah, and I
Good,
enjoy. In
great.
fact, I'm one of the lucky ones. Sometimes when you're enduring these pandemic times, okay, I am luckier because I'm doing small time gigs.
That's
And
great.
so, like, I would say from June through the end of September, I actually had like a dozen gigs, good paying gigs. Okay.
Wow.
But they're small time gigs, not compared to like what the big guys do. And
Sure. But
yeah.
that's okay though.
Oh,
Hey
it's great.
Jim, I just want to read a couple of quick comments because you're probably not able to see these, but I don't
Yeah.
want them to go away and then miss them. But our good friend Ron Donette, who you just were talking about, this is really nice. He said, "Jim is my mentor, my role model. I miss his company and conversations. If you are ever in a room with Jim, the best thing you can do is shut up and listen." I just think he's right. I, tr-
Well,
Ron,
thank you, Ron.
I try to do the same thing. I just try to just absorb it. I want to say on a personal note that when I was coming up, you're a few years older than me. And when I was coming up in the business, I looked at you and some of the guys that had been around for a few years before, like, Steve Edelson and the late great Steve Edelson and Rick Drum and of course yourself. And, you guys were that generation of kind of after Lenny and Jim Coffin and Lloyd and the Jew-Wops that were the new guys at that time that were moving and shaking, and I really looked up to you guys and I appreciate you letting me into your little club, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it's all part of what I call the succession plan. Okay, and I mean, you experienced it, and so that's what I got to experience too with Jim Coffin, with Bill Ludwig. It was always about succession because they cared about the future, and when they kind of latched on to someone that they thought had, let's say, the chops, okay,
Yeah.
to do the whole gig, then they put all their effort into that person to make sure that they gave him the correct tutelage to take it to the next level. And so that was where I was so lucky. John, you and I met early on in my career at Ludwig. And I'm going to say, was there a store that you worked at once called Mr. G's?
Yeah, I actually said it. I wasn't sure. I'm glad you weren't watching during my intro for you, because I mentioned we met at, it was called Freddie G's.
Freddie G's.
So close, Freddie
Yeah.
G, Freddie Gilfeather. And my recollection, we opened that store in 1984.
Okay.
Does that sound right, that it would have been that year?
Yes, that would be around the year, and that was the year when I was on that particular trip. I also, I stayed in that area. I was traveling around that area. Well, that would be the Boston area, right?
Yes, yep,
So,
just north of Boston.
so I was staying that night after I met you, and I think it was Weymouth. Am I saying that right? Weymouth, Massachusetts. I was in a hotel, and all of a sudden the fire alarm went off, and I panicked, and I didn't know what's going on and stuff like that. And I go to my door, and I look out the peephole, and across from my door was the elevators, and there was the thing that you put cigarettes in, like one of these. It's a stand with sand on the top.
Yeah, yeah.
It was on fire. So I actually was in a fire that night the night after I met you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I had to be removed from my room, of course. I was the guy that actually, luckily, the fire extinguisher was right near me. So I was able to get it out with the help of another guy. Did the whole thing upside down. You had to turn it upside down and everything.
Yeah. Oh
And
my gosh.
So to finish up the story, they moved me to another wing because everybody in that wing had to be evacuated because of smoke. The fire wasn't that bad. It was mainly smoke. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they put me in another wing. And then that morning I went down to check out, and they say, "Oh, Mr. Catalano, thank you so much for being the person that found the fire last night. And we really appreciate it. That'll be $89.95.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, hey, no problem. Thanks.
Welcome to Boston. Yeah, you're waiting for them to say, please accept a complimentary room, Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
$89.95.
And I was even in the paper that morning. I remember I was interviewed the night before.
Oh wow.
By the news and stuff like that, as part of this hotel fire. It was relatively minor, okay, but still. And
Yeah.
it was just really funny and stuff. So I like telling that story because it connects directly to the time that I first met you.
Wow, I never heard that part of it. Well, you'll always remember that our meeting and that visit to Boston, and I was telling everybody, a year later in '85, I remember it being '84. A year later in '85, when I started working for Simmons, I remember seeing you at a NAMM show, and I reintroduced myself to you, and you remembered me like immediately. You said, "Oh yeah, the Freddie G, Freddie G's," and I feel like, I mean, this was 36 years ago, but you recalled a good part of the conversation we'd had, and I was just so impressed by that. All I wanted to do was say hello, and you're like, "Yeah, I remember that," and yeah.
Well, we're very similar. I think I'm Italian. I think you might be Italian.
Oh, I am. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And our noses are exactly the same and stuff. And so I actually,
Same
a
height.
lot of people said same height. We sort of look alike in some ways. Only you have better hair than I do.
I don't know. It's I don't know about that. Well, a couple other quick questions I just want to run by you that have come through before they disappear, and then I see them later and go, "Oh, I wish I thought to ask Jim that question." My friend Anthony Kushina is asking, Jim, could you share with us what are you doing these days? But I think he also asked you. We can get to that, but I think it was Anthony that. Yeah, sorry. Anthony said, "Do you know if Ringo used a mahogany or maple kit?" And this would be something I'd be interested to know as well. Presumably the original Oyster.
I'm pretty
Pearl
sure
kit.
the original drum set was a mahogany kit. The original,
Okay.
62, 63 kit which he got in 63.
Yeah.
We didn't see him until 64. Although remember, the kit that we saw on the Ed Sullivan show was technically brought in. That wasn't
Yes.
his kit. Okay. It just
Right.
made it look like his kit. It was a duplicate. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm
The
pretty
key,
sure that was mahogany at that particular time. And you got to remember, back in those days, even after the Beetle boom happened, there was a lot of shifting around of woods that had to do with filling supply because the demand was so high. So they
yeah.
used a lot of different woods, and that is why a lot of drums ended up getting spray painted white on the inside.
Okay. All right. That was and I'd heard that, and I was
Yeah.
going to ask you that, and yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, Mr. Ludwig said that they had to do it. It was just something that was essential because even Bill 3 would tell me that they were working basically 2 full shifts every day, 6 days a week, not 7. And, they only take off major holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's and Easter and things like that. Well, that was Sunday, but still they were working all the time during that
Yeah.
particular, era. So they had to do a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of my friends, like a guy named Chuck Hewick, who worked. You probably remember Chuck
I
working
remember
shows
Chuck.
with me.
Yep.
I mean, he was a very valuable Ludwig guy, and we were, great friends. One of the stories I love to tell about Chuck is that when I first joined Ludwig, I was not exactly real popular. And what I mean by that is that here I am, I'm a, happy guy. I was just happy to have a job, okay, in 1983. But when the Selmer people would have me go up to the Damon Avenue plant, where I spent most of my time, I had to wear a suit. And back then, it was a 3-piece suit, okay?
Yeah.
So I had to be part of that, management team thing, okay? And it did not go over real well with the guys that had worked for Ludwig for many years. And so Chuck became a very good friend, and he actually worked on Damon Avenue and then came to Elkhart in the transition. He was one of the only ones that did. And but still, it was one of my best friends, and he still is today. However, in the beginning, it was difficult getting going. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, so one
Absolutely.
of the questions there, what am I doing today? Well, I retired at the end of June of 2019. And guess what I was going to do most of the time? Gig. I was going to play
Right.
my drums, play my vibes. I was going to play symphonic percussion. I had it all down. And I was so busy from July 1st of 2019 until March of 2020 that it was crazy. And then, of course, like with everybody, everything stopped. So I lost a lot of my gigging. And the other thing that I do, though, is for the last 4 whole years, I've been a college percussion teacher. So even in my final years of working at Ludwig, I started doing a night job. I know it sounds weird. Why do you have to do a night job? But I was trying to get in. I was trying to become what's called an adjunct instructor. So I got a job at 2 colleges, the University of Notre Dame, which I'm a graduate of, and also at a college called St. Mary's College. At Notre Dame, I teach drum set students primarily. And I teach really smart students who are aeronautical engineering majors, chemical engineering majors, finance majors, stuff like that. But they're drum set players, and they're pretty good too, and they want to expand their drum set abilities. So I do that, and I teach there. Maybe this semester is 6 hours a week, okay. And then I also teach at St. Mary's College, which is across the street. There, I actually have music majors. So I actually teach marimba and timpani and concert snare drum and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's a little more challenging because I have to keep up on the levels that students need to be at, because I benchmark a lot of things to what other colleges are doing so that I know that my students are on the same level, because it's a degreed program. And so I'm constantly trying to brush up on my teaching, but also my playing. So like my marimba playing, I've really had to make a lot of advancements there. And to tell you the truth, I'll never really get there, because what is done on marimba today is kind of way above my abilities. So that's what I do. So I teach mostly, and I will play. In fact, I
Yeah.
probably have 20 gigs booked starting in May.
That's
Between
great.
May out until September or so, I have about 20 gigs booked. Almost all of them are outside and socially distant, and so I'm looking forward to it to get back out there. It's good that I am a vibes player, a drum set player, and a symphonic percussionist. So that way I get the variety of what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Did you get vaccinated, Jim, or
Oh
have you got
yeah.
your shot? Yeah, you
Well,
did.
I'm 67 years old, so I got both of them now.
Great. Good man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got the Johnson and Johnson on 2 days ago, Monday. Just by happenstance, I was able at 60, I was eligible to go, and that's what was on the menu that day. And there were others there for their second shot, so you could see they had. I'm sure you remember they have different stations where people were getting Pfizer and Moderna shots. But
Yeah.
since it was my first shot, they took me right to the Johnson and Johnson aisle, and yeah, really happy.
Yeah. Same here. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's a start. Someone had asked, and I apologize to the person that asked this question. I thought I pinned it. I'll probably see it, but they had asked, I think, for you to maybe share a memory or maybe to talk about Eric Carr. I
Oh,
know it had.
easy.
Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah, it was Kyle Schneider who said, "What can you tell me about any of Eric Carr's kits?"
Well, Todd Trent is the guy that knows everything about Eric Carr's kits. Okay.
Yeah,
Todd would get the order together, send it to me, would get it to the factory. The factory would make it, get it out there. And of course, prior to myself, Bill 3 was involved a ton in Eric Carr's kits.
yes, yeah,
So I really don't know a whole lot about the details of Eric Carr's kits to sort of go back and remember and say, oh, it was this or that or whatever. I can only tell you this, that in the early part of my career, Eric Carr was just the nicest person you could imagine.
yeah,
And
yeah,
here this guy with the hair and the look and, kind of in a band that maybe had a couple guys that weren't always noticed as or known as the nicest guys.
yeah.
Okay. All right. But
Very
yet
well said.
this guy was a sweetheart.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he would show up at the NAMM show. He'd be there maybe for 2 days, and he would be there from 10 in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening, and then want to hang. And then he'd be taking pictures with people and signing autographs, and was just so kind and gentle. And what a refreshing thing to experience. I mean, I got great. I mean, you did the artist thing, okay, and so I just had great experiences with artists.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can maybe see over this shoulder my Ringo drum head. I
Oh
don't know
yeah, I
if
see
you
it.
can see it.
Yep.
Uh, as when you meet Ringo, the rules of engagement are you don't engage him, he engages you.
Yes.
Okay, he's a Beatle.
He's a Beatle.
Right. And so,
Yep.
you don't go up and say, "Hey, Ringo, how you doing, man?" No, you wait for him to come to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And, so, in the years that I worked for Ludwig, I really only met him a few times, maybe 7 or 8 times or so, and really only talked to him at length about maybe 3 times. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but still, it was great and stuff. Now, other artists, different story. Guys like an Ed Shaughnessy, that would be a totally different story. Just a great guy. I do have a quick story for you on Ed Shaughnessy and Louis
Yeah.
Bellson that I like to tell.
Oh
So,
yeah, absolutely.
so it was. So we talked about Rick Drum from Remo. Okay. So Rick Drum, I went out to visit Remo, and I was always close with Remo Belli, the man. Okay. And so, in fact, here's my, a picture I found of Remo and I going way back.
Wow.
But
look at
anyways,
that.
so I'm visiting the Remo factory, and it's my last day there. I'm taking the red eye back that night. And Rick says, "Hey, we need to go down to Burbank." And I said, "Okay, well, what's up?" And he said, "Well, Louis is the guest artist tonight. He's sort of a last minute fill-in. So we're going to go down and hang out with Louis for this show, for the taping of the show. There was a rehearsal like at 3 and then the taping at 5.
Yeah.
He said, "So why don't you come with us?" And so I said, "Okay." So I have all my stuff, my bag with me and everything. So just bring it along. And so we go to the taping, and Louie's not there. Louie is hung up in the air.
Yeah. Okay.
Air travel delays.
Yeah.
But his brother Hank brought the drum kit in, so he had I believe it was the Remo kit already at that time. Okay, and so he has the kit all set up, and so Ed Shaughnessy has to do the rehearsal, okay, because Louie's not there. So and I got to I'm not going to say meet Johnny Carson, but I got to be introduced to Johnny Carson, and that again a little bit like meeting a Beatle.
Well, that's you could say you met him. I mean, you were introduced to him. You met Johnny Carson. That's way cool.
So anyway, all of a sudden now they say, okay, he's not going to be here for the rehearsal, and so NBC Studio sent a helicopter to LAX to pick up Louie Bellson as soon as he landed and fly him right to Burbank, right to the studios, and just as they're getting ready to tape, he comes in. And remember, he's not just the musical guest; he's the talking guest too.
Okay. Yeah.
So he does his talk thing, and him and Johnny are very close because Johnny loved Louie and Buddy, of course.
Sure.
And so afterwards, after the taping and stuff is done, Rick Drums says, "Hey Jim, you want to go hang with us? We're going to go out to dinner with Louie and the band." So here I am. Not Doc Severinsen, because Doc was different, but the whole band and Louie Bellson and Ed Shaughnessy and Rick Drum and I, we are out to dinner at a little Italian place, right there in Burbank. And then I'm saying, well, guys, I mean, I gotta catch a red eye. I got to get to the airport. And so like around 9:30, I'm starting to get a little nervous here,
Yeah.
And so Louie hears me. He says, Jim, are you on the such and such a flight at midnight back to Chicago? And I said, well, yes, I am. He said, don't worry about it. I'll get you to the airport. So we go out to the curb after the dinner, and up comes this rickety old panel van. And there's Hank Bellson, his brother.
His brother,
driving.
yeah.
And so, Louie opens up the side door, which was real rickety and rusty, etc. Remember, he flew in a helicopter. Okay.
Yeah.
Now there's a panel van. We open up the side door, and there's all the drum cases in there. And Louie says, pick a case. And I said, well, aren't you going to sit up front with your brother? And he said, there's no seat on that side. So this was a panel van that only had one seat. And so here I am, pretty young in my career. I think this was 85 or so. And I'm sitting in the back of a rusty panel van with the show star of that particular night as we're, bouncing our way through the LA freeways back to the airport to catch our flight.
Down the 405 freeway. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
But it made for being a lifelong friend with Louie Bellson, and he always remembered that. And every time that I saw him at shows, he would talk about that and how fun that was, and how nice it was to meet me. And of course, he was Italian too, so we had this connection, and so I like telling that story because it was just such a neat thing.
I love that story, and it's perfect because it sums up Louie in a nutshell. Here he is, like you say, he comes in a helicopter. He's not only the guest drummer, but he's the featured guest of the Tonight Show, the biggest show on TV. And then he's taking the ride with you. He's seeing you off at the airport on a red eye, sitting on a drum case, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
no big deal. He just as soon, give you a piggyback ride to the airport if he could have,
Oh yeah. And hanging with all of these guys like Louie Bellson, Joe Morello, Alan Dawson.
Yeah.
Every time, Danny Gottlieb and I too, every time we were together, it was sort of like, Jim, you got your sticks with you? Well, yeah. Or in the case of Alan Dawson, do you have your brushes with you? And, and I always knew if I was going to be with Alan Dawson, I'm bringing brushes. Because he would say, let's work out. Let's do some working out. And so so here I was, let's just say a I don't know, standard mediocre drummer, but I get to hang with these titans of the drum industry
Yeah.
and not just get to know them personally, but to actually get some teaching from them also as we're hanging out. And so,
That's,
so
yeah,
great. Yeah.
that's huge, Jim. And I'm just going to say that I wish, I had stopped playing for pretty much my entire time at Zildjian, just because of the travel and just the time restraints and all that kind of nonsense. And I'm so happy for you that you continue to play and you continue to, you have these great relationships with these incredible drummers, and they recognized you as a peer. You know what I mean? That you were able to talk. I mean, I talk shop with these guys too, but it's so cool because we've talked about this, that, you're trading fours with Louis Bellson, or like
Yeah.
you say,
Well,
brushes with Alan Dawson. It's,
one time I was at the Frankfurt Fair in Germany, and I think this was probably early on, 86 or 7, 8, something like that. And I'm with Danny Gottlieb, and he said, "Hey, Jim, we're going to go tonight, and we're going to hang out with Joe and
Joe Morello.
Joe Morello."
Yeah.
And all right, help me out here. I just lost the drummer that was on for Conan, who you got me to see.
Max Weinberg.
Max Weinberg.
Yeah.
And Max is going to be there, and Nick Mason's going to be there. And
Oh,
whoa. And so I went with Danny, and we were hanging out, and we are in this big drum room and stuff, and everybody was sort of having fun, and everybody was trading fours, and there was a lot of kits in there, and people were taking turns. And of course, John, this is during a time period when we didn't carry cameras.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I can't believe it. All the times that I was in places that I didn't have a camera. I can't record it like we can today.
Yeah.
And it was, like no one's going to believe me that I got to, trade fours with Max Weinberg or Joe Morello or any of these guys. They're never going to believe it, And then go to dinner, and then Nico McBrain would show up and would go to dinner at and the place in Germany down from the Messe. It was called the Hescherhof.
Yes. Yeah.
Very, very swanky old German kind of a restaurant where you had a waiter for each person, and all your food came out with a dome on it, and they would and
Very swanky.
and of course when we would go to those kind of places, it was bedlam. It was crazy, and it was just so much fun, though. So
Yeah. I know Frankfurt. It was. I was talking with someone recently about. I'm trying to remember. I can't keep my guests straight, but we were talking about the Frankfurt show, and for all its craziness and its intensity, it was always a fun hang to after hours.
it was kind of my favorite show. The Chicago Drum Show is my favorite show. Okay, because I love the vintage vibe and just the people that are there. But as far as a commercial show, the Frankfurt Fair was always my favorite. And we just always had a great time. In the later years, Todd Trent used to go with me to that show, and we just always had a great time, and it was just wonderful. I do have another story I got to tell you about the very early years. So, Ludwig moved out of Damon Avenue in 1984 over Thanksgiving, and they moved to Monroe, North Carolina. And of course, that was a pretty traumatic thing to have happen. I mean, you're leaving your hometown, moving from Chicago. Yeah. And so, I had to work with a lot of people that didn't know stuff about the drum business. And in some ways, that was bad, but in some ways, that was also very good. And so, after the plant had moved, they said, "Jim, we need you to go up and we need to do some cleanup work. And do you mind?" And of course, you got to remember, even though I was called the marketing manager, I'm still pretty junior. Okay? And I got to do a lot of dirty work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I go up there and someone says, "Now we have a bunch of stuff in the artist section that we need to get cleaned up. We have a lot of and so can you take all of these drum heads down to the dumpster?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'll be glad to." And there was all just a bunch of beat up drum heads. And I said, "Well, so what are these from?" And they said, "Oh, they're from the artist kits." Oh, okay. So I go down and I'm throwing drum heads like frisbees into this big dumpster.
Yeah.
Kind of having fun with it a little bit, and I missed a few, and I'd have to go out and retrieve them, etc. I get down to the bottom of the box, and I called this particular person over who was from the band instrument division, and I said, "Hey, there's 3 drum heads that I found here that have some initials on them." And he said, "Yeah, well, I don't know what those are." "Yeah, well, just throw them away." I said, "Well, if you don't mind, since I'm throwing them away, can I keep them? Can I have them?" "Well, yeah, why would you want things with initials on them, though?" And I said, "Well, just as a memento of this particular occasion, because we're getting, the plant's closing, etc." So the first one I got, I like to show this one. This is an original Ed Shaughnessy drum head.
Look at that. Yeah.
Okay, front head from Ed Shaughnessy. Second one I got,
Joe Morello.
Joe Morello, right?
Wow.
And then, of course, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
And this is the third one that I have, an original Buddy Rich front drum head. And so, here I am walking out with these, and it was almost like, yeah, the kid wants these things with these initials on them. I don't know why. And I said, well, they're just kind of cool, I could maybe use them for, maybe as a painting canvas or something like that. I can have people paint pictures on them and stuff. They said, "Okay, kid, whatever floats your boat," and I said, "Okay." So anyways, as soon as I got home, I put those away, and I said, "This is gold."
Oh, man.
Yeah, that
Wow.
actually happened to me quite often, okay, where I would find things and stuff like that, and people didn't know exactly what they were, okay?
Yeah. Yep.
So,
And if they were going to be thrown away, then it's fair game, right? I mean,
fair
why
game.
not?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we threw tons of stuff away, and
Yeah.
so yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
just another
That's
one of those cool stories.
That's a great story. I want to just quickly mention a couple of guys. I saw that Grant Henry, our friend Grant Henry, was watching
Yeah.
earlier, and he made a comment. I'll see if I can find it. It was a very nice comment. No surprise. See if I can find it. Well, in the meantime, Dave Wilkinson over in the UK. I know
Oh,
you know
yeah.
Dave. Yep. Hi, Jim. Good to see you. Looking so well. Ludwig still going strong here in the UK. So,
Good.
yeah, good man, that Dave. Top chap, as we say. Yeah, you got some great comments here, Jim, which you can see, if you want to watch this later. And I was going to say, totally up to you, but feel free if there's some things that I've missed here that I haven't mentioned to you and you want to reply to some of these questions, by all means, you can do that. Ron Donette said, "Rest in peace, Frankfurt." Yeah, I know. We don't mean to. We're not. Yeah, it was a fun hang. I didn't. Oh yeah, Grant Henry said, I am forever grateful for the years of J-Cat stories I was fortunate enough to hear. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was,
great.
That's just it. Working in the drum industry was, it was hard work, but it was a lot of fun too. And when you think about it, that, all I wanted to be was a drummer. That was all I ever wanted to be. And just the simple fact that I kind of got the path to be able to do that. Okay, and yes, there was the stresses of business, etc. But to be a drummer and to work in the drum industry, I call it my true Hollywood story. I mean, how perfect is that?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, you earlier on, and while we've been talking here, you mentioned luck and and I'm not comparing myself to you by any means, but when I've talked about my working in the industry, I've said, yeah, I was lucky, but I think you and me and other guys we've talked about, maybe Rick Drum, and at the end of the day, it might have been luck that you got that first connection to Jim Coffin, and he brought you into Premier that year. But it was your hard work. And let's face it, if you hadn't been good at what you do, you wouldn't have got that call in 1983 from Selmer to come work for Ludwig. So I think you're a humble guy, and I think you should accept
And I was
that
just
it,
around a lot of good people. Another
yeah,
guy that I learned so much from. You probably remember him from early shows. His name was Dick Gerlach.
sure,
And
yeah, I
Dick
remember Dick.
Gerlach, we called him the Sergeant Major because he was like a military guy.
He
Okay,
looked very, yeah,
yeah,
stocky and yeah,
stocky and I mean, and he could kick your butt. I mean,
I,
literally. In
yeah,
fact, he's 80
anyone
some,
can.
and he can still kick your butt. Okay, but but I learned so much from him. And I like to say that there wasn't a thing that I did at Ludwig that I didn't run past him first as a sounding board. Because he was the sales manager for years. And he was with the company, I think, since 1962 or something of that nature.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
he was quite a sounding board for everything. But almost everything I did at Ludwig, I did it in cooperation when we're developing products. See, my job was kind of different. Today, you have Terry Bissett, who's there with his sales team of Mike Nealon and Josh Touchton, and you
Yep.
got Uli and Bob Henry, and these are all the guys that are working the Ludwig thing. But when I was there, I was kind of, at first I had Bill Ludwig III, but then he left in 1990, and lots of times I was by myself. But there were guys from the plant that would step up to try to help me in marketing things. A guy named John Cummings was one of these guys, especially with marching stuff. But
Hmm.
happened to cover not just the combo market, but the marching market and the Musser mallet instrument market and the timpani market and the educational kit market. And then be in charge of sales and marketing and education and product development. And then as when you now have to start you're making things in the USA, but now you're also making things in foreign countries.
Yeah.
Now you got to start traveling at first to Taiwan and then later on to China
Yeah.
to line up all of these things and establishing relationships with factories and building products that are going to be at certain price points so that you could stay effective in the market. That's what it was all about,
Yeah.
being price effective in what I call the race to zero. The race to zero was everything just
Yeah.
had to keep getting cheaper and cheaper
Oh,
in order to
I,
make it in the market.
yeah. Yeah.
And so that it was just a great experience, but there was so much responsibility. And then whenever somebody new would come in, they wouldn't understand all of that. And so it was always a challenge to bring the new people up to speed and to get it, so this is what we got to do.
Yeah. And hope, without being presumptuous, but like you say, someone new would come in, you'd have to bring them up to speed, and you'd hope that they'd stay long enough for it to be worth that period of time it took you to basically train them to kind of understand things. Because I know I went through that, where we get somebody new in, and not necessarily someone that worked for me, but somebody that was above me, that was a controller or a CFO or somebody. And they're a business person, they're not from the industry, they really don't know, they think we're selling widgets,
Yeah,
and you finally get them up to speed, and then they're gone, they're
yeah.
off to another company, to do what they do. So yeah, I totally, I know. And that's another reason why, I 36 years, and the way you managed to keep all those balls in the air and all those things that you did.
I had
Remarkable.
a very good president of the company in my tenure from 1991 to 2002. His name was Tom Brzezicki. And Tom Brzezicki was the president and CEO of the company, but he was a musician. He was a keyboard player and he was a composer. And so he really had an affinity for music. Okay.
Hmm.
But he was a brilliant economist too. Okay. And a brilliant businessman. And he was the kind of guy that would come into your office the day before the sales meeting and say, "So Jim, what am I going to see tomorrow at the sales meeting?" And I'd say, "Well, Tom, you get this and that." And he said, "Great." He said, "We're going to make money on this stuff, right?" I said, "Well, yes, sir. I'm not going to launch any products we're not going to make money on." He said, "This is what I love about you, Jimmy." And then the meeting would be done. He
Yeah.
had enough faith and confidence to let you do the job. And so he was just a great influence with me. Still is today. I've stayed in touch with him. He was a professor at Notre Dame for after he left Conn-Selmer, and so learned a ton from him. But it was guys like that really helped cement learning big business skills. Okay, yes, there's the industry things that we need to know, but then you got to look at things in a macro kind of a way for sustainability, for having the company be able to make it to the next decade. Things that you had to do in order to to make that all right. And and I had other guys earlier. There was another gentleman named Pete Ryan who was a vice president of marketing, and Billy and I both worked for him. And I tell you, we learned a ton from him. Now, he wasn't easy. He was tough. He was kind of a Marine kind of a guy too. But you loved him. You knew he was a good guy. You knew his heart was in the right place. And he was a guy that was work, 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 all the time work. And I'll just tell you this one story. I think it's 87 or 8. We get back from the Frankfurt Fair, and we don't get in until 2 o'clock in the morning. And we leave the airport at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
he says, gosh. I'll see you at 8, Jimmy. 8 o'clock. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll be there. And you were. And so I can honestly say my work ethic came from the training and the tutelage that I had under a guy like a Pete Ryan.
Yeah. Because
it was no nonsense, but boy, it was good training. If you wanted to make it, this is what you had to do to make it.
I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad you told that story. I think I don't doubt that one bit. When I started at Zildjian, there was a very, very strong work ethic. The people that were there at the time, and it wasn't like it was even forced upon me, but you like yourself, you learn by example, and you see the people around you, whether they're your boss or just another coworker. And I think it instills this not even so much loyalty, but just an ethic, a work ethic and I think I had a pretty good work ethic anyway, but yeah, I mean, you and I, we worked a lot of weekends and a lot of nights, and you didn't get that comp time back. You miss your kid's birthday when you're on the road somewhere, and all those things. And I'm not saying people aren't working hard now, but it's changed a lot, I think, in the industry too, where, and it's probably better. I don't mean to sound like people aren't working hard enough, but it's different. And I think that, like yourself, I think this is what you're saying. And I know it's for me, it definitely helped shape me into who I became, and really instilled a strong work ethic in the way I did things. And I give a lot of credit to my wife also, because my wife, to be able to support me where I still wanted to be a gigging musician, performing out there. Yeah. But I had these business responsibilities for my job, which included traveling all around the world. I mean, I sat down once and I used to keep track of every time I had to travel to foreign countries. And I logged up 37 trips to Europe. Wow. Yeah. And about 6 trips to China, similar number to Taiwan, etc. And after a while, you sit back and you say, holy cow, I really went a lot of places. And that meant that my wife was by herself to deal with things on her own, etc. Yeah. etc. And it was in an era, a lot of it was in an era of pre-email and easy communication. Yeah. Yep. And then there was also times that I would, when I first got my first BlackBerry or something, I'm sitting in the back of a car in China, and we're bouncing all over the place, and I'm getting physically sick, and the car's going 100 miles an hour, and there's wrecks everywhere, and it's sort of like, dear Pam, I don't know if I'm going to survive the day. I just want you to know I love you, and I hope I see you again. Send quick. Yeah. But that was the experiences that we had. Yeah. In some of those travel situations, especially to countries like China. But I can also tell you this, that in the times I went to China, every time was different, but it was better. Every time was better. And so maybe not the driving part,
but as far as everything else part, it was
Yeah.
better. At first, it was pretty rough.
The other types of conditions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd heard that too. You know, gosh, well, we still have time. We're about an hour and 15 in. And I wanted to ask you a couple of things too. You had that awesome Buddy Rich bass drum logo heads, and Buddy, when you joined in '83, Buddy was still with Ludwig at that time.
No, he had left
Yeah.
already.
He
I
had
think
left. Okay.
I think he left sometime in '82 because I was working for Slingerland at the time that Buddy left Ludwig, and I really don't know all the details but I think it was just simply, he had some sort of a contract with the Ludwigs, and the Selmer people weren't going to renew it, and he wasn't really crazy about working with the band instrument people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think there was some falling out, and Buddy had left. So
I see. Okay.
yeah, so I never actually got to work with Buddy at all during my time at Ludwig.
Yeah. I thought there might have been just a slight overlap, but that makes sense. I remember because he left us in '87, and I know those last few years he wasn't endorsing a drum company. He was playing
Right.
those Radio King drums that
Yes.
Joe McSweeney had put together for him.
Yeah.
I have to say, Jim, I think anybody who is on Facebook, they're watching this right now, and is following you there. These posts that you're doing with the Ludwig catalogs are just spectacular. With your, I think you're up to 1980 right now. The
Well,
80
I'm doing 1980. I just finished 1980. Now today I jumped down to 1960.
Oh, you did. Oh, I haven't seen that yet. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to say I remember those catalogs in the early '70s when I first started. When I first got interested, I had a drummer friend who was already playing a Ludwig set and had Ludwig and Slingerland. I think even a Camco catalog, and just seeing those pictures that you put up. By 1980, I was working at Wurlitzer, and we used to get those catalogs, and they were some of the most beautiful. I mean, Slingerland also did a great catalog, but I'd say those two companies were the best at really representing the products, like
Oh
all
yeah,
in under,
and
yeah,
that's all Bill Ludwig. I mean, Bill Ludwig Jr. the second. He
yeah,
was
the
he was
chief.
the catalog guy. He was a forward thinking guy, and I learned so much from him. That's why we called him the chief. Because he was the chief executive officer. When you think about that too, that we kept this guy going after he sold the company, traveling and being the ambassador for the brand for 22 more years.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I will always be grateful to the Ludwig family. I still stay in touch with Brooke, who is Mr. Ludwig's daughter, and
Yes.
Bill
Yeah.
Bill Three, of course. And Bill Three has his own company now, doing kind of repeating history in a way
Yeah.
with
Yep.
his WFL line and stuff. But I still I'm good friends with him, still respect him. I try to stay friends with everybody. I used to tell, sometimes new people would come in, they'll say, all right, we're getting all of our cymbals from, we'll say, Sabian. I said, no, we're not going to do that. I said, I have
Yeah.
built these relationships with every single cymbal company. We're going to get, 3 sets from Zildjian, 3 sets from Sabian, 3 sets from Paiste, and we're going to mix it up. And then some of the others too, Meinl too. And
Sure. Yeah.
they say, Jim, we got to show loyalty. And I say, I am showing loyalty.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, I know. And we always loved that about you and respected that. And we had the same thing kind of on our side too, where, because of the relationship Zildjian has with Yamaha as a distributor in Japan and for a while in some other countries, we would oftentimes have only Yamaha drum. If we had drum sets even on the booth, they'd be
Yeah.
Yamaha. And at a point it was like, well, we've got to show I work with all the drum companies. We have endorsers that play all the different drum companies, and we can't just be aligned with one company.
Yeah.
It's a
I got to show you some things. When I first joined Ludwig, 1983, one of my first assignments, they said, we need you to go up to the 4th floor. That's on Damon Avenue. The 4th floor was the warehouse. Sort of not very, doesn't make sense, does it? No, you would think the warehouse would be on the 1st floor. But
Yeah, you would hope so,
It didn't
anyway.
work that way. And so I said, well, what am I looking for? They said, well, you're looking for some drums that have been scratched. Okay, scratched. Okay, so I'm looking
Scratched.
for
Okay.
scratched drums. Yeah, they're black and they got scratches on them. Oh, okay. And so I come down and I say, you mean these?"
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding?
And they said, "Yeah, those they have like these scratches on them. Can you get rid of those?" And I said, "Well, I can get rid of this one real fast for you." And so there was about 125 of them or so. So this is my 1979 Ludwig Black Beauty, which would have been the last Black Beauties made on the Damon Avenue plant
Yeah.
because they
Wow.
were discontinued for a while afterwards. And and so I like to show that. But then I also have another one in that Ludwig had the hammered bronze snare drums. And this is something I think I picked up in 1983 when I first started. And just beautiful drums
Ah,
that were
absolutely.
made on Damon Avenue that I made into my main go-to drums that I use for my drumming and things of that nature. That was my rock snare drum, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I try to use them. Of course, I am getting to the point where I've been collecting drums. Well, once I had a little bit of money to start collecting drums, I started adding more and more to the herd. And now I'm at that point of time where I say, I think I went too far.
Yeah.
So eventually I got to start what I call thinning the herd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And but anyways, it's been I that's why I love going to the Chicago Drum Show. I always have some finds there of things that are just so cool to look at, take pictures of, and then sometimes trade and get and things of that nature just to add to my collection. I mean, I love the fact that you have a Gretsch, a Rogers, a Ludwig, all in your setup. I mean, that is really cool. And and so and the final thing is for me was what Ludwig did for me, and this goes to the team at Ludwig today, which is it was sort of done by Uli Salazar and Bob Henry and Mike Nealon. They got together and they said, "How can we honor JCat at with his retirement?" And so they made me an entire kit of they knew that I liked vintage white marine pearl,
That
but
is. Look at that.
they had this badge cast with my name on it. There's only 2 people that have a cast badge with their name on it. 3, Alex Van Halen, Ringo, and myself, which is kind of cool. But this is my go-to snare drum now that I use in most of my gigs, and so those guys they really did me right. And so I'm so thankful that those keys that Mr. Ludwig gave to me and sort of put in my hand and said, travel with this, and you're going to take Ludwig for another 3 decades. And that's about exactly what I was able to do, when he did that. And then now the fact that guys like the people I just mentioned, including Uli Salazar, he knows so much about the product. He respects the history of it
Yeah.
and knows the product. He's a drum builder himself. Okay. So it's just so heartwarming for me to see the product go into hands of people that care about it as much as I did as they try to take it forward.
Yeah.
And that feels good.
That has to feel good. Yeah. That's great. I mean, that's all you could ever hope for, is that you hand the keys to somebody like Uli that not only has the dedication and the desire, but has the knowledge, has the ability to do that. He's got all the pieces there to do it. That's great. Wow. What beautiful drums, and fantastic. Wow.
Yeah. No, I've been really fortunate throughout most of my career and life and stuff. So yeah, it's been a joy. I mean, drums. I mean, that's part of my problem. I have, all these drums that I know I got to start thinning the herd on, but I'm also saying, oh no, I can't get rid of that one.
No, I know.
They're too beautiful. But I also don't want to leave my wife with drums, or my kids with drums that they don't know anything about. So I'm going to start writing stories about each drum, because almost every drum that I have has a story to it.
Yeah.
And many of them are prototypes. And I just got one more to show you.
Yeah. Whatever. As many as you want to show, Jim.
This was given to me by Bill Ludwig. Was his snare drum. And this is a drum that it's a Ludwig and Ludwig,
Yeah.
mahogany
Look,
shell. I think it
look
was
at
called a
that.
Super Ludwig back in the day. I'm putting it a little bit closer.
Yeah,
Ludwig,
that's
Ludwig.
great.
And
Yep.
it's got snares on both the top and the bottom. In fact, he put a clear head on it for me so you can see snares are on the top that are going on the bottom of the top head.
Yep.
And of
Underneath.
course,
Yep.
snares on the bottom too. And it was at the time probably more of like a concert type snare drum, that
Yep.
was used for symphonic type work. But anyways, the chief gave me this. It looks like mahogany shell with glue rings. You can see them there.
Look
And
at that.
so this is a very a prize of mine. One of these days, Mike Corrado from the Vinny's Drum Collector, he'll be asking me about that drum, I'm sure.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on the show, the Chicago show. My first time going, believe it or not, was 2 years ago, where we had breakfast together one morning, and
Yeah.
I had such a great time there. I could only stay for one day because my granddaughter on the Sunday, on the second day, was her dance recital. So I got on an early flight back home and went straight. Kelly picked me up at the airport. We went straight to the recital, and I got to see my granddaughter. But I was excited to go last year, and of course that didn't happen. And now they're saying they're having it this year. Are you going to go this year?
I'm hoping to. I would like to. I actually have a small booth. Uh, so yeah, it kind of depends on how things are going. With
Yeah.
with the pandemic, etc.
Yeah.
But Rob Cook says that it's going on. It's going to happen. But a lot of it depends on Illinois and
Yeah.
the venue and things like that. And even though it's only 2 months away, even less than 2 months away, it's there still may be some things that could cause it to be delayed.
Yeah. That's what I think that, I'm not going to go this year, but I hope it happens. I hope it goes
Yeah.
off and
I
it's,
mean, for me, it's only a 120-mile, 130-mile drive. So, I can do that and probably can do it in, 2 nights in a hotel. So,
Yeah.
I would like to do it, but it will be my first time to travel anywhere. So I'm a
Yeah.
little tenuous about it all. I mean, I'm still teaching in person at Notre Dame, which is, I mean, I just looked at the what's called the dashboard at Notre Dame today, approaching 1,200 cases of COVID this semester.
wow.
Yeah, there were 2,000 people that had COVID last semester. By the way, there's only 8,500 students at Notre Dame.
Yeah, those
So
aren't good numbers.
no, it's not good numbers.
No.
And of course, I mean, I'm vaccinated, but still, I go there. I got my face shield. I got my mask. I stay,
Yeah.
10 feet solid away, and lots of hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies. But it's still it's risky just going over to teach, and it's hard to teach with masks and all that stuff on. But hey, people are doing it everywhere, and so it's the way it is. I do have one lesson that I still teach via Zoom too. That's why you see all my practice pads and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
behind me, So, but it's still good.
My bandmate, Neil Porter, guitar player, a singer, plays great acoustic guitar, really enjoyed your stories. So I just want to say you got a thumbs up from my buddy, Neil Porter, who's,
Oh, thanks. There's so many. Different people have said you really got to write these all down, and I know I should and stuff. And I just got to hope I don't lose my mind where I start forgetting the stories. Because they're just some precious types of things that great experiences that I got to have that
yeah,
almost no one else could have. It was something that I got to experience, especially
absolutely.
being with the Chiefs so much and the different artists and things like that was really very, very special time. So it's been a joy, I tell you. What's so cool is that here it's been a year. It'll be 2 years at the end of June that I've been retired, and I still feel like I'm part of the brand. Okay,
That's great. Yeah.
and I'm still promoting the brand, still just part of it, and so I think I think I will be forever.
That's great.
And so yeah, I'm happy about that. Just the same way that Bill Ludwig was. I mean, I mean, I don't go to shows. I don't want to go to shows now. You know,
No.
there are no shows now. But anyways, you know, Bill Ludwig retired when he was 66 years old. You know, I'm 67.
Yeah.
But he was committed, and he stayed active with the brand for all that time, you know, until he was in his, well, we'll say late 80s,
Yeah.
when his health, you know, didn't permit him to do it anymore. But you know, I hope that I can just continue to stay involved. And I think when you're a player, when you are out there playing and gigging, and you're part of a company's legacy or heritage, it all connects much better. You know, sometimes I sit back and I realize that my 36 years at Ludwig, it's only been in existence for 111 years. And
Wow.
so basically, I had a position of responsibility with the Ludwig brand for a third of its entire existence.
That's amazing. I never thought to do the math on that, but you're absolutely right. That's
Yeah, well,
phenomenal.
your time at Zildjian, your percentage would be a little smaller.
It's a blip.
Going back to 1623, that would be a little smaller.
24 years out of 400, right?
Right. But anyways, you know, just the fact that, you know, that I had been, you know, part of the brand for 36 years. But the other thing that was really neat was I was the first person that was not a Ludwig family member. That was sort of, and look, I was never really in charge. There were people above me in charge. One of the things you need to understand with, you know, Ludwig was a company that had Bill Ludwig and the president, the vice presidents, and all of the people. Well, when that got purchased by Conn-Selmer, or by Selmer in 1981, Ludwig became a division,
Yeah.
as opposed to a company. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when they put me in the marketing, sales and marketing role, I was sort of at the top of the division. But there were other people that were vice presidents of Selmer and later Conn-Selmer that they were in charge. And so when I say I was never in charge, I sort of mean that. Okay.
Well,
But I was responsible for everything that was Ludwig and Musser,
right.
which was a lot of responsibility, especially from 1990, it was either 92 or 94 until 2013 when we were a public company.
Mm-hmm.
That was really difficult to keep it moving viably, you know, through you know, the expectations of what everybody had of a public company trading on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Because Conn-Selmer was owned by Steinway, Ludwig was owned by Conn-Selmer, but it all counted. And so when you had to do presentations, you're giving presentations to big people.
Yeah.
Who are, you know, taking care of stockholders, shareholders, as we call it. So it became very real as far as the responsibilities that you had to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where you cut the mustard right there. I mean, when you're, well, I won't put words in your mouth, but you're in a position where you're answering to, you know, you're answering to different masters. You've got keeping the shareholders happy and keeping the drummers in the world happy. You know, and sometimes those two things aren't the same. And I know.
And what I had to do is I had to be what I call the filter. I was the filter. And what I mean by that is that there was the drum industry over here that had the expectations of what Ludwig was. Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's the corporate world over here, the Wall Street corporate world. I had to be the guy that was the filter in between that could absorb the information from the drum industry and from Ludwig, the brand, and then present it back out to the corporate world. And that wasn't easy. You know, because you had to play both sides of that fence. Yeah. And to be able to do that for a long period of time, I mean, it was quite a challenge. But I tell you, I learned so much. there was a time period, most people don't know this, that Ludwig was actually for sale in 1989. And I had to sit down. It was a lot of responsibility, but I had to sit down with the different companies that tried to buy Ludwig. One of them was Pearl. One of them was KHS, which would be Mapex or Jupiter. Okay.
Yeah. And Sonar. Yeah.
And yes, and now Sonar. Then there were some private equity, hedge fund type companies. And then there was another company called Zildjian
I know. Yeah.
that looked at buying that. And I had to sit down with your CEOs of the time and go over all the numbers. Working with Zildjian was not too bad because I didn't feel like I was working with a competitor.
Yeah.
But when I had to sit down and unveil the numbers and the processes and everything to say the people from Pearl and the people from KHS, which would be Mapex, that was difficult. Oh, and Henry Juskowitz from Gibson.
Gibson. Yeah. Yep.
And so, I was put into, when I was very young, into some pretty challenging negotiation type of things. And then what was great, the president of the company at that time, his name was Bill Peterson. And he called me in and he said, Jim, you need to help me sell Ludwig. And I said, oh, well, Mr. Peterson, I'm always out there selling Ludwig. No, hear me out. I need you to help me sell Ludwig. Oh. He said, but while we are selling Ludwig, I need you to continue to sell Ludwig as if nothing is going to happen.
Wow.
And you know what? We did. And buckled down. It was in the years that I had just met my wife, Pam. We weren't married yet. So it was my single years. And I was worrying about having to move away and going with whoever bought us.
Yeah.
But boy, talk about a challenge. And during that time, what was great, and I don't know if you can see my hands, but sales during that particular time started doing this. I don't know if it had anything to do with me. I just think the good Lord smiled down on us and said, we're going to help you get some sales up here, to the point where we got to the point where all of a sudden the president called me in and he said, okay, Ludwig is doing well enough that now we're not going to sell Ludwig.
Wow.
And
how about that?
And so that kind of cemented a little bit of my credibility with the company for the next 10 years or so, even 13 years. And so, what a challenging time though. But to sit down with these big hedge fund guys and, the Wall Street people and try to explain this small little company. The last story I'll talk about on that part, it was just, I'd say, okay, now we're going to need to do this new 5-octave marimba. Okay, Jim, so how many thousand are we going to sell? We're going to do about 50. Okay, 50,000? No. 50.
50 units.
50 units. And if we do 50 units, we're going to be 40% of the market. And so to get Wall Street people with a mindset for that,
yeah,
it was always a challenge.
This is great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then even, with many products, I remember I would have situations where, certain people that were in charge, they'd say, okay, Jim, so you want to add this new color of blue, to a drum set. Yeah, we're going to add the blue. Okay. Well, how many are we going to sell of the blue? Well, I hope to sell this many. Well, that's not that many. I said, well, that's because the blue is going to take away from the black and the red and the white.
Right.
No, yeah. We can't have that. We got to sell the same amounts. And I say, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Incremental. Yeah. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So those were the kind of challenges when you're dealing with Wall Street type people of what you had to deal with. But, we managed to get through it. I managed to survive. I managed to, stay there until it was time where I said to myself, I'm going to retire. And I retired at a perfect time when I had a chance to go to work at a university. And even though I'm just a part-time, low-level instructor, I'm not a professor or anything like that, and I had a chance to do something else and to enjoy life in a sort of a just different way.
Yeah.
And realizing that I've had a really successful career, but I wanted to enjoy life more.
And you're still young enough to enjoy it, which is great. You know, you feel good. You're
Well,
still in great shape.
when the weather's good, I'm out riding my bike a lot. Now, I'm not a runner like you are. Okay, I'm a walker, and
That's
that's
good.
because I got my dog, and I take my dog for walks every day, sometimes twice a day, and so I enjoy that. And but and it's a beautiful day here today, so I would be out on my bike, if I wasn't here, riding my bike just for fun, and of course drumming. Drumming is an aerobic activity.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, I just feel so fortunate that I think drumming keeps you young, and having an interest like collecting drums and just being involved in the drum industry, it's just been such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because remember, like you, I mean, yes, I'm 7 years older than you, but we grew up with these Ludwig catalogs.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm fortunate that I have a scan of every catalog. Okay, so that's
That's
why I can do
great.
the photos that I do. Okay, but because we grew up with them, and they were our dream books. And so here we're looking at the centerfold of drum catalogs when other teenagers our years were looking at centerfolds of other magazines. We're looking at
Right.
we're looking at drum catalogs.
That's true.
Yeah, and so it became such an honor to be able to work for a company, especially a legacy brand like a
Yeah.
Ludwig or a
Yeah.
Zildjian. I mean, when you think about brands, Zildjian, Ludwig, Fender, I mean, those are the legacy brands. Gibson,
Yeah.
Steinway and pianos that have lasted the time. And I think that was the single biggest challenge that I had as a marketing and sales guy for Ludwig, was that you had to remember the company's legacy as you projected forward and keeping the company fresh and vibrant and moving forward. Because if you forgot any part of the legacy, a certain element of your followers is not going to like that.
That's right.
They're going to pull away from you. And so it was this constant challenge, and I will say balance.
Yeah.
You had to balance what was new with what was old, and that made it even more difficult than for like a company like say a Tama or a Pearl or a Mapex, that they're modern companies.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they could have kind of, and they have very good designers, so they could do whatever they wanted to do, and people wouldn't look at them from the past and say, well, but it's not like what you did in the 50s or the 60s.
Exactly. Yep.
But
Very key what you just said. Yeah.
yeah, we always had that problem, and that's why I love what Uli and the Ludwig team is able to do now, is they continue to keep that vibe happening
Yeah.
going
Yep.
forward, even though they keep coming up with new and innovative types of things. And and it's all about innovation. Mr. Ludwig was the king of innovation. Remember, he wasn't an engineer himself, but he had a team of people always around him that kept things driving forward.
Yeah.
Just like we have a young engineer down at the Ludwig factory named Ryan Taylor, who is he's a drummer. He's just a brilliant, and he's a young guy. I think he's only 31 or 2 years old, and he's designing all kinds of things, even stuff that hasn't come out yet, that the markets will be hearing about soon. And that's what I love, is the fact that we have this new generation that is looking at things, respecting the past, and driving forward into the future.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I just have to say, you're going to see these comments when you look at them, but many people are saying, and I'm going to say it too, you might want to think about writing a book. That's all I'm going to say.
Rob Cook actually said, you might want to think about writing a book, Jim. And he said, and I'll be your editor. And so,
Well, what's better than that, right? Rob
yeah.
Cook. Yeah.
And I started thinking about it, and really it's just, it's my journey. It's my journey as a drummer, really. And wow, I mean, what an experience.
Yeah. Well, one final comment I'm going to read to you that you'll see our good friend Jerry Donegan said, Jim, you are always a class act. Ludwig was fortunate to have you on board. And amen, Jerry.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Jerry. I and see he was part of that group too,
Yeah.
of hanging with Lenny. I hung out with a lot with the Zildjian people back in the earlier days, and I learned a lot from all these guys. And whenever I had questions about marketing or anything, I would always go to them. That was the other thing that was so great about the earlier era of the industry, is that there was enough room for everybody. Okay, sales were on an upswing,
Yeah.
and it was sort of like everybody had their share of the pie, and there weren't that many players, but you could pull information from other people, and there was this camaraderie. I think there's a general camaraderie amongst us drummers anyways, but there was
Exactly.
a definite camaraderie amongst the industry people that we wanted to help each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I'll always be appreciative of that.
Me too. Yeah, I agree. I think we all at the time, and we felt fortunate to be where we were, whatever company we worked for, and you're right. There was this whole kind of attitude or vibe of like everybody helping everybody, and it wasn't a as competitive, I guess, or
Yeah.
it felt differently. And for anyone who doesn't know who Jerry Donegan is, Jerry worked for Zildjian for, Jerry, I hope I have this right, probably 40 plus years. He was Zildjian's vice president of global sales for the last 20 something years that he was with the company. I was very fortunate to work with Jerry he left Zildjian, retired a year before me. So for like 23 years, I worked side by side with Jerry, and an incredible wealth of information and knowledge. And so Jerry, thanks for watching. Big shout out. Well, Jim, this has been so great, so fantastic. I want to give you some time to get out and enjoy the day and ride your bike.
Yes, the dog's waiting for me.
Okay. I want to, don't go away. We'll sign off on the live stream, but
Okay.
I want to just say thank you. And thanks to everybody for watching today, and to tune in Saturday for Andy Newmark, which probably won't be half as good as this.
No, no, it'll be great.
This has been so great. I've enjoyed this so much, and thank you for being here today. And anything you want to say in closing?
Well, just thank you, John. You've always been a class act, and like I said, with you hosting these things, it's just a really wonderful thing. You're the David Letterman of the drum industry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I said that because he loves drummers.
I know. Yeah, that's good. Maybe I'll grow the beard like him. I'll look like Ron Dennett and
I wouldn't.
and David Letterman. All
Ron,
right. Well,
Ron, lose the beard.
yeah, Ron, lose the beard. Well, thanks again. Big hand for Jim Catalano, everybody.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's been a joy.
Fantastic. All right, Jim, hang on one sec. I'll see you in a second.